Lanterns of the Hollow River tells the haunting tale of a village cursed by its dark past. Each year, glowing lanterns drift down the river, carrying whispers of the drowned and the damned. When a young woman discovers that the lights are not offerings but warnings, she unravels a chilling truth. The river is alive, feeding on grief and fear. As shadows rise from the waters, she must choose between breaking the cycle or becoming another soul claimed by the depths. A story of sacrifice, cursed waters, and the thin line between memory and haunting. The evening air was thick with the scent of damp earth and riverweed as Elias stood at the water's edge, his hands steady but his eyes restless beneath a furrowed brow. Around him, the hollow river stretched out like a dark ribbon, its surface dotted with the soft, golden glow of lanterns bobbing gently in the current. Each lantern was a beacon, a fragile vessel holding the souls of the drowned souls that, if not duly appeased, might rise to reclaim what was theirs. Elias reached into the basket at his feet and pulled out the first lantern, its glass casing warm against his calloused fingers. His eyes traced the flickering flame inside, steady yet alive with a strange, unearthly light. He lowered it carefully into the wooden boat that creaked softly as it rocked with the river's slow pulse. Beside him, Ada watched intently, her dark hair swept back by a cool breeze that carried with it the faint murmurs of the river's restless past. "Father," she said softly, stepping closer, "do you think the souls are restless this year?" Elias's jaw tightened, and he did not answer immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the far bank where more lanterns floated like fallen stars, some flickering unevenly as if struggling against an unseen wind. "We must do our part, Ada," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "The river remembers, and so must we." The ritual was as old as the village itself, passed down through generations bound to the curse that clung like mist to the hollow river. Each year, the family returned the lanterns to the water, ensuring the souls trapped within could find peace in their ephemeral light. Failure meant the dead would rise, a fate Elias refused to entertain. Inside their modest cottage, Mara moved quietly among the shadows, lighting candles with hands that trembled just enough to betray her calm facade. Her eyes, rimmed with fatigue, flicked toward the window where the lantern's glow seeped through the cracks in the shutters. She whispered prayers for protection, each word a fragile shield against the dark that pressed close. Ada lingered near the hearth, her mind racing with questions she dared not voice aloud. The stories her father told, the warnings etched into the family's history, were they warnings born of truth, or superstitions clinging to the past? Yet the flickering lanterns and the whispers carried on the wind felt too real, too immediate. As dusk deepened, Elias pushed the boat into the river, the lanterns swaying like captive stars tethered to his hands. The water was cold, the chill seeping through his boots and settling deep in his bones. He cast the lanterns one by one into the current, each splash a small sound swallowed by the river's endless murmur. Then something caught his eye. A lantern near the shore flickered violently before its light was snuffed out entirely. The glow vanished as if swallowed by the water itself, leaving an inky blackness that seemed to pulse with malevolence. Elias's breath hitched. He scanned the riverbank, but saw nothing, only the steady dance of other lanterns, their lights unwavering. Yet the absence of that one flicker was a wound in the night, a silent herald of the storm to come. Ada stepped closer, sensing the shift in the air. "Did you see that?" "I did," Elias said, his voice tight. "Something is wrong." The family gathered on the bank, the river's cursed light painting their faces with ghostly hues. Mara clutched Elias's arm, her fingers cold and trembling. "We've done everything as we should," she whispered. "Why would the lantern vanish?" Elias said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the water, where shadows seemed to twitch just beyond the lantern's fragile glow. Somewhere beneath the surface, the drowned stirred. That night, the river whispered secrets only the lost could hear. And the family, bound by duty and dread, stood on the threshold of a darkness that would test the limits of their courage and the strength of their bonds. As the lanterns of the hollow river continued to glow, their light was no longer just a beacon of hope, it was a warning. The ritual had begun, but so had the unraveling. The lanterns bobbed like restless stars, and the river waited. The evening air hung heavy with a damp chill as the last light of day slipped behind the thick trees bordering the hollow river. Ada stood at the riverbank, her slender frame wrapped tightly in a worn shawl, the edges fraying from years of use. Her dark eyes scanned the water's surface, where the lantern's tiny beacons of ethereal glow floated quietly, bobbing gently on the river's slow current. But tonight, the lanterns seemed fewer, their light weaker, flickering with an uneven pulse as if struggling against some unseen force. A faint, almost inaudible whisper drifted on the breeze, threading through the reeds and curling around Ada's ears. She shivered, not from cold, but from the eerie sensation that the river itself was speaking, murmuring secrets meant only for those who dared to listen. She strained to catch the words, but they dissolved like smoke, leaving only the echo of their haunting cadence. Behind her, the family home sat nestled among the moss-draped oaks, its weathered boards creaking faintly in the evening wind. Inside, Mara sat by the kitchen table, her thin fingers wrapped around a flickering candle, its soft glow casting long shadows that danced across the worn wood. Her pale face was etched with worry, eyes wide and restless as they darted toward the window overlooking the river, as if expecting to see something, anything that might explain the unease settling over her heart. Elias moved silently through the dim kitchen, the scrape of his knife against stone barely audible. He sharpened his fishing blade methodically, the repetitive sound grounding him amid the growing chaos in his mind. His deep-set eyes, dark and weathered from years spent fighting the river's moods, stared off into the distance, unfocused but heavy with thought. He knew the signs more lanterns gone meant the curse was stirring, and with it, the restless spirits lurking beneath the water's surface. Ada's footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor as she approached. "Father," she said, her voice tentative but edged with urgency, "more lanterns are missing. I saw it myself by the river tonight." Elias's jaw tightened. "It's the curse," he murmured, his voice low and rough. "It's waking. We must be careful." Mara looked up, her lips trembling. "Please, Elias, can't we do something? I feel it, something terrible is coming." He shook his head, exhaustion tugging at his shoulders. "We must wait for the ritual. The river demands its due, and we must not fail." Despite his words, Elias's usual stoicism cracked beneath the weight of his fear. The growing silence between them spoke volumes, a gulf of dread that no ritual could immediately bridge. That night, Ada found herself restless, the whispers of the river echoing in her mind. She confided in Lena, her closest friend, as they met beneath the gnarled branches near the village's edge. Lena's bright eyes, usually full of laughter, held a skeptical light as Ada spoke of the missing lanterns and the strange voices. "Ghost stories, Ada," Lena said softly, though her voice betrayed a flicker of unease. "You know how the village folk get afraid of what they can't see. But what if it's real?" Ada pressed, her gaze fixed on the glimmering river beyond the trees. "What if the curse is more than just stories? Something is happening. I can feel it. Lena hesitated, then reached out to squeeze Ada's hand. Whatever it is, you won't face it alone. Back at the house, Mara's anxiety deepened, her hands trembling as she lit candle after candle, whispering prayers for protection. The shadows lengthened, and the faint sound of whispers grew louder, swirling like mist around the old walls. Elias stood on the porch, watching the river's surface where lanterns bobbed and vanished as though swallowed by the water. His face was etched with grim determination, but beneath it, a storm of fear and guilt raged. The curse was no longer a distant threat, it was a presence, creeping closer with each lost lantern. The night air thickened with a sense of foreboding as the whispers continued, a chilling reminder that the hollow river's secrets were far from buried. The family's fragile peace trembled on the edge of unraveling, and Ada's growing curiosity was the spark that might ignite the darkness waiting beneath the cursed light. As the moon climbed higher, the river seemed to pulse with a cold, spectral heartbeat. Somewhere beneath the surface, the drowned stirred, their lanterns flickering in restless anticipation. The family's burden was heavier than ever, and the shadows whispered promises of a reckoning yet to come. Ada turned from the riverbank, her resolve hardening. The mystery of the missing lanterns was hers to unravel, even if it meant confronting the darkness that Elias feared. The whispers in the dark were calling, and she would answer. The evening air hung heavy with a damp chill as old Tom's footsteps crunched on the gravel path leading to the fisherman's home. The sun had sunk below the hollow ridge, painting the sky in bruised purples and deepening blues. Elias stood on the porch, his lean frame rigid, eyes narrowed against the creeping dusk. Beside him, Mara clutched her shawl close, her pale face drawn with quiet anxiety. Ada lingered just inside the doorway, her dark eyes fixed on the fading river beyond. A sharp knock echoed through the still air. Elias opened the door to reveal the village elder, old Tom, his bent figure silhouetted against the dying light. His thick beard was flecked with grey, and his weather-beaten face bore the scars of years spent battling the river's caprice. In his hand swung a lantern, its flickering flame an unnatural shade of blue, casting eerie shadows that danced like restless spirits along the porch walls. "Evening, Elias," Tom rasped, his voice low and gravelly. "I come with words you must hear." Inside, the house felt smaller under the weight of the gathering darkness. The flickering candlelight barely held back the shadows that pooled in the corners of the worn kitchen. Mara moved silently to tend the fire, while Ada settled at the wooden table, her fingers tracing the grain nervously. Old Tom set his lantern down with a deliberate clink, the flames sputtering briefly as if struggling against an unseen wind. His eyes scanned the room, lingering on Elias with a somber intensity. "The river's restless," Tom began, his voice dropping to a grave whisper. "The drowned grow restless, their lanterns flickering with anger. They do not forget, they do not forgive." Elias's jaw clenched. "I've heard the stories, Tom. Old tales to scare children and keep fools from the water after dark." "These are no stories," Tom replied, leaning heavily on his cane. "The curse that binds your family to this river is older than any of us. It was forged in blood and loss when the flood came and took them all. Those souls are trapped, their lanterns the only tether to the world of the living." Ada's breath caught. She leaned forward, eyes wide, the weight of the elder's words pressing down on her like the cold river itself. "Why are the lanterns disappearing?" Tom's gaze darkened. "Because the tether weakens. Each lost lantern is a soul slipping free. If the ritual fails, the drowned will rise to reclaim what they lost, and those they find will join them in the depths." Mara's hands trembled as she lit another candle, the flickering flame casting a fragile glow over her pale features. "We've done the ritual every year," she whispered. "Why now?" "Because the curse is hungry," Tom said, voice cracking with age and sorrow. "Hungry for balance, for sacrifice." A sudden gust rattled the window panes, and the lantern on the table flickered wildly, plunging the room into near darkness. Mara shivered, pulling her shawl tighter, while Elias rose abruptly, tension radiating from his taut frame. "We'll not let it come to that," Elias said, voice firm. "We've protected this family for generations." But even as he spoke, the lines of worry etched deep into his face betrayed a growing doubt. Ada caught the glance he cast toward the river beyond the window, the river that glowed faintly with the soft, cursed light of countless lanterns bobbing like stars in the night. The room fell silent, save for the whisper of the wind and the distant murmur of water. The chill seeped into their bones, as if the river itself had crept inside to claim its due. Ada's mind raced. The stories, the warnings, they aligned with the strange disappearances, the flickering lights, the restless whispers she'd heard when no one else was near. The weight of history pressed down on her, heavy and unyielding. She knew, deep inside, that the river's curse was more than mere superstition. It was a living thing, hungry and patient, waiting for the moment when the family might falter. As old Tom prepared to leave, he fixed Elias with a final, piercing look. "You must keep your vigil strong. The river does not forgive, and it does not forget." Outside, the lantern's pale light swung gently in the night breeze, casting dancing shadows across the weathered stones. Elias closed the door, the heavy wood thudding shut like a heartbeat, steady but weighted with dread. Ada remained by the window, staring out at the river's glowing lanterns, their soft cursed light reflecting in her wide eyes. The burden of the past, the fears of the present, and the unknown future all converged in that silent moment. Somewhere in the depths, the drowned stirred, their eyes like cold fire watching, waiting, and the river whispered its ancient, terrible promise. The night deepened, and with it, the shadow of the curse stretched ever longer. Ada knew that the coming days would test their family in ways they could not yet imagine, and that the fragile boundary between the living and the dead was thinning, ready to shatter. She swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on her tongue, but beneath it a flicker of fierce determination took root. If the curse was a chain forged in darkness, she would find the links to break it, or be consumed by the river's cold embrace herself. The lanterns flickered once more, their ghostly light bobbing softly on the water's surface. The hollow river waited, patient and eternal, and Ada watched, her heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. The river's story was far from over. The heavy quiet of the house was shattered by Ada's sudden gasp. She bolted upright in bed, heart pounding fiercely against her ribs, as the remnants of a nightmare clung to her mind like cold water. Shadows stretched long across the ceiling, cast by the flickering firelight from the hearth below, and a cold draught whispered through the cracks around the window panes. Her breath came out in visible puffs, misting the chill in the air. She sat still for a moment, eyes adjusting to the dark, before slowly rising and padding softly toward the doorway. The house was still and silent, but an oppressive weight hung in the air, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Downstairs, Mara sat hunched over the kitchen table, her pale hands trembling as she lit small candles, their flames flickering anxiously. The soft glow did little to ward off the shadows that seemed to gather in corners, pressing close with cold fingers. Mara's lips moved in a barely audible prayer, words whispered into the darkness, pleading for protection that felt increasingly fragile. The lines beneath her tired eyes deepened each day, a silent testament to the toll the curse exacted on her spirit. She glanced toward the mantel where the family's lanterns rested, each one a fragile beacon of light against the dark, tethered to the drowned souls of the hollow river. But tonight, one lantern was missing. Elias paced near the riverbank at dusk, the sky painted with bruised purples and deepening grays. His weathered hands clutched the worn, leather-bound book of rituals passed down through generations. The river glowed faintly, a spectral procession of lanterns bobbing gently on the surface like restless stars adrift. Elias's voice was low, chanting the ancient incantations that had always kept the curse at bay. But tonight, the lanterns flickered unevenly, their cursed light wavering like a fragile heartbeat. A shiver passed through Elias, not from the chill, but from something darker, more insidious. The river was speaking, its voice a cold whisper carried on the wind, warning of the danger creeping closer. Back inside, Ada joined Mara in the kitchen, the sight of the missing lantern hitting them both like a punch to the gut. "It was right here," Ada said, her voice trembling. "I saw it last night." Mara swallowed hard, fingers tightening around a candle. "The curse, it's not just out there anymore," she whispered. The house felt suddenly smaller, their sanctuary breached by the same darkness that haunted the river. Ada's thoughts raced. If the lantern could vanish from inside their home, what else could the curse take? That night, both mother and daughter were visited by nightmares. Ada dreamed of cold water rising, swallowing the house whole, the drowned reaching out with pale, glowing hands. Mara saw the river's reflection in her eyes, endless and dark, as the lantern's light flickered and died. They woke in the early hours, hearts pounding, the oppressive silence now a suffocating presence. Elias returned from the river to find the family gathered in the hearth's dim glow, faces etched with fear and exhaustion. The missing lantern was a wound in their defenses, a sign that the curse was no longer content to lurk on the river's surface. It was coming for them, reaching into the warmth of their lives and pulling at their fragile peace. Elias's stoic mask cracked just slightly, revealing the desperate resolve beneath. "We must be more vigilant," he said quietly. "The ritual must be done again with greater care." As the night deepened, the cursed light of the river flickered once more, a silent herald of the darkness rising. The family's fragile bonds strained under the weight of unspoken fears and mounting dread. Each lantern lost was a soul slipping further from rest, and with every vanished light, the river's cold embrace tightened its hold. Ada lay awake, staring out the window at the trembling glow of the hollow river. Somewhere beneath that cursed light, secrets waited to be uncovered, secrets that might save them or doom them all. The line between safety and danger blurred, and the vanished lantern was only the beginning. The river whispered promises of terror, and the family listened, caught between the shadows and the fading light. Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and decayed leaves. The lanterns bobbed uncertainly on the river's surface, their light a fragile heartbeat in the encroaching darkness. Elias's chant faltered, a tremor of fear breaking through his ancient resolve. The curse was no longer a distant threat. It was here, inside their home, inside their hearts, and the river's cold fingers were reaching ever deeper. The vanished light had cast a shadow that would not easily lift. Ada's eyes snapped open once more, the nightmare never far behind. She knew that to survive, they would have to face the darkness before it swallowed them whole. But how could they fight a curse that had already found its way inside? The river waited, patient and unforgiving, as the lanterns flickered and faded into the night. And in the silence that followed, The family's fate hung in the balance, swaying like a lantern on the water's restless surface.